now it's time to start talking about how we record our money in transactions in QuickBooks Online. So if you click on this plus new menu, you have this menu item here, this first column called customers. And so there are several different ways that money can come into QuickBooks. If your client invoices customers, or if you're a small business owner using this and you invoice customers, that's one way. So an invoice is something that you create when your client or customer is going to pay you in the future. So you send them an invoice so they can pay it. And when they pay that invoice, you use the receive payment button here. Now, an estimate is used if they don't actually owe you the money yet. So this is called a non-posting transaction in QuickBooks. We send the estimate for the client to then review and approve and then say, yep, I want to hire you. And then later you can convert an estimate into an invoice. Now, what I want to talk about in this lesson is something called a sales receipt. So we use a sales receipt for money that we've received from a customer that we never had to create an invoice for. So it's not money that they owe in the future, it's if they paid us right away. So a sales receipt, first thing we're going to do is choose a customer. And I'm using a customer that's already here in the Intuit sample file. So you'll notice it pulled in the email already, pulled in the address. It defaults to today for your sales receipt. It should default to today for your sales receipt date. It might default to the last transaction you entered. So just always be aware. Typically, I haven't had any issues with this where it automatically goes to the current day, but you always want to double check that that's the correct sales receipt date. Or if you're entering these transactions after something has already happened, you might need to adjust that sales receipt date. And it's just as simple as clicking on the calendar and choosing the day. In this example, they're tracking the location of the sale as well, which can be important if you have a client or if you are a small business that needs to track sales tax. Now, tags are something that you can use to help filter information. So we're not going to talk about tags right now. I just want to point out that you do have the option to assign a tag to a sales receipt. All right, so for the payment method, these are all the different payment methods that we currently have in this file for how money could be received in. If you need to add new, click add new. I'm going to assume that it was cash, which is why we're using a sales receipt, and that we are going to take that cash to the bank with all the other payments we received that day. So maybe it's checks and other cash payments. So I'm going to post it to undeposited funds. Now, I recommend we always post to undeposited funds no matter what, because undeposited funds works like this. If you or your client has received multiple payments in a single day that they're going to take all to the bank at one time as a single deposit, if you don't use undeposited funds, then you can't tell QuickBooks, here's the total amount of my deposit, so that way when that money comes through the bank account, it can match. So we need to use undeposited funds to match or to group multiple payments into a single deposit, just like you would on a deposit slip, like an old-fashioned deposit slip. You'd sit there and you'd write your change and you'd write your cash and you'd list each check and you'd total it out. And the amount on the deposit slip is the amount that's going to be credited to your bank account or debited to your bank account, since we're accountants, but using bank terms, right? They credit your bank account for that deposit. So even if you post each payment separately, if you use undeposited funds, it doesn't hurt you. QuickBooks will still match and recognize that that's the same transaction. But this way, if you ever do have a situation where multiple payments get lumped together, you've already covered your bases. I just do all of mine to undeposited funds. All right, so for the sales receipt, we need to choose a product or service. So I'm going to go ahead and pick design. That by default pulled in the description, the quantity, the rate. If it's taxable, you would just check the box for taxable. I'm going to go ahead and leave that off. If you needed more lines for your sales receipt, you can just click add lines. If you want to delete them all, click clear all lines. And then you can put a message on your sales receipt if you're actually going to send this to a customer. So maybe they want a receipt for payment, you can send it to them. Here's a message that will be displayed on the statement. If you need to add any attachments that you want to also maybe go out to the client when you send them the receipt, you can click add attachment. Now, if there's a discount, you can do a value or a percent here on the sales receipt. For sales tax, we're not going to go into sales tax in this video, but just know that you can add sales tax to a sales receipt here. All right, so now we can click Save and Close. All right, so let's do a couple more just to demonstrate. So there's more than one way to get to the sales receipt area and to enter them. So we can also go from sales and customers, and then we can choose a customer. So we actually just did Amy's Bird Sanctuary. I'm going to click on her. And, oh, QuickBooks is trying to be helpful. So here we can see our sales receipt for $75 that we just entered. You can get a glimpse of it right there. But if we want to do a new sales receipt, we can click New Transaction and choose Sales Receipt right here from the customer menu. So again, it's going to default and pull in all of that customer information. And all we have to do is make sure we choose our payment method. If there's a reference number ever to be entered, you can put that in there. Choose your product or service, and then hit Save and Close. So that is how you enter a sales receipt. If you entered your sales receipt and you realize you made a mistake and you need to fix something, I love using this magnifying glass to find the most recent transactions. Let's say, oops, I forgot to put an amount. My sales receipt is for $0. I can just click it from here, and you can actually just come in and edit this however you need to. So let's say we needed to put a rate of $150 in, or let's say, oh shoot, that wasn't supposed to be taxable. I'll unclick that box. Now you can hit Save and Close. So it makes it really, really easy for you to come in and edit these transactions after they've happened. Which brings me to another point. So when we click Edit, you'll also notice here at the bottom, we have this additional menu. We have Printer Preview. So if you want to print your sales receipt or see what it'll look like. Make Recurring. So if they're going to be paying you a set amount at a regular intervals, you could click Make Recurring and create a recurring sales receipt. If you want to customize the design, you have the Customize button here, or we can click on More, and that opens up the option to copy, void, delete your sales receipt. If you want to see the transaction journal, so let me click that so you can see. And this is, by the way, not just on sales receipts, the same menu you're going to see on all of your forms here in QuickBooks Online. So this takes us to our transaction journal, so you can see everything here. And then if I click on this sales receipt again, I'm just going to demonstrate the last button here, which was the audit history. So if you want to see what changes have been made to your sales receipt, you can see who did it, you can see when they did it, and in green you can see what was changed. So I changed the amount to $150 here. What's interesting is I actually didn't change the address, but it's showing that that's a different address there. But you can see here I changed the amount to $150, and I changed it from taxable to not taxable. And so it's pretty cool that it highlights those changes for you. And then of course the final amounts are going to change based on that. So the audit log is very, very helpful. And I just want to show you that that's available there at the bottom of your sales receipt as well. So again, if you want to use sales receipts, we're going to click New. We're going to click Sales Receipt. You would not use a sales receipt if you have already created an invoice for the customer. So we'll talk about invoices in an upcoming lesson, but you will use a sales receipt if you are not creating invoices for your customer and you've received money. So again, pretty simple and straightforward to use in QuickBooks Online, and I recommend that you jump into the sample file and go ahead and give it a try.